Do you think the Roman Empire was built only by brave emperors? The answer is no. The Roman Empire was built on debt. We often imagine Roman soldiers as unstoppable warriors driven by honor and discipline. But behind every piece of equipment, every helmet, and every sword, there was an extremely complex and expensive system. Thousands of soldiers needed food, weapons, roads, and salaries. Horses had to be fed. Siege machines required wood and labor. And all of this required money. A lot of money. So how did Rome finance centuries of conquest? And why does it still matter today? When you look closely at Rome's war machine, you see a system. War was not only fought on the battlefield, it was built into the financial structure. Once this system started working, it became very hard to stop. Expansion was no longer a choice. It became an economic necessity. Does this sound familiar? Let's go back to the beginning. In the early days, the Roman army was made up of citizens. If you owned land, you could be called to serve. Soldiers brought their own weapons and expected to return to their farms after the war. But as Rome grew, wars became longer and more distant. This system stopped working. You could no longer go to war for a year with just a spear. A professional army was needed. As a result, Rome began to centralize military financing. The state started paying soldiers. The pay was not very high, but it ensured loyalty. Then came the real turning point. Conquest became a source of income. Every new province meant new taxes, new slaves, new gold mines, and tribute. It created a self-feeding cycle. War was financing more war. But this is where the danger began. Rome did not rely only on taxes. It also borrowed heavily. During long and costly wars, such as the Punic Wars, the Republic took large public loans from wealthy elites. A financial class known as the equites was at the center of this system. These were not patriotic donations. They were investments. In return, they expected interest, tax collection rights, and trade privileges in newly conquered lands. War became a business, and the more profitable it was, the more wars were fought. Over time, this militarized economy changed everything. Political power shifted to generals who promised loot. Senators became like shareholders of violence. Private contractors, known as the publicani, managed logistics and tax collection, making huge profits. It was a kind of military-industrial capitalism in ancient form. But the costs kept rising. The state constantly needed new income to pay soldiers and creditors. When conquests slowed or rebellions created budget gaps, Rome used a classic method, reducing the value of its money. During the reign of Nero, the silver content of the denarius began to decrease. In later centuries, this process accelerated. A reliable silver coin turned into a symbol with uncertain value. The result was inflation, loss of trust, and economic decline. By the 3rd century, Rome's monetary system was in free fall. Meanwhile, the rich became richer. They protected their wealth in land, slaves, and external assets. The poor were crushed by taxes and devalued money. Public services declined, corruption increased, and the cost of war was pushed onto the people. This was not just a military collapse, it was a monetary one. Now look at today. Governments run large deficits. Wars are financed with debt. Central banks increase the money supply. Financial elites profit from crises. The system needs constant growth to survive. It is not exactly the same, but the structure is surprisingly similar. Rome teaches us an important lesson. An economy based on expansion will eventually hit a wall. There will be no more land to conquer or resources to exploit, but the debt will remain. Expectations will remain, and at that point, the system turns inward. Rome responded with higher taxes, more currency devaluation, and more control. It also used policies like bread and circuses to keep people distracted. Today, the names are different. Taxation, monetary expansion, stimulus packages, but the mechanism is similar. Money is created, the state spends, asset owners benefit, and ordinary people lose purchasing power. And the cycle continues. History shows us something very clear. Empires do not fall from outside. They collapse when the math stops working. So what can you do? First, become aware. Many people think inflation is random, debt is freedom, and growth is endless. But this is an illusion. You may not be able to leave the system, but you can understand it. Learn financial history. Try to understand systems, not just investments. In every crisis, ask these questions. Who provides the money? Who benefits? And in the end, who pays? Because once you see the truth, you cannot ignore it. History is not just the past, it is a warning. And Rome tells us this very clearly. When the mathematics of a system breaks, and no one has the courage to fix it, the end becomes unavoidable.